We now present For the Record.
Just ahead, Wisconsin's head of Planned Parenthood on the latest in a lawsuit that calls a statewide abortion ban into question.
It underscores what we've contended all along, that the law is not enforceable.
Plus, a bill signed into law that could change everything about your child's reading education.
I think it really gives those kids a chance to succeed in school.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Naomi Coles. Governor Evers signed a bill into law this week that will transform how your child learns to read in Wisconsin schools. Republican lawmaker Joel Kitchens of Sturgeon Bay was one of the bill's authors. He joins me now. Representative, good morning.
Well, good morning.
This bill emphasizes a phonics-based reading approach. Talk to me about how that's different from what is currently in Wisconsin schools.
Sure, and it's not just phonics. That's the core of it, but it's not just that. But really the history of it is what happened was traditionally we taught reading that way based on phonics, about teaching kids how to sound letters out and that type of thing. But back in the 80s, an approach became popular called balanced literacy, where they kind of de-emphasized phonics. And a big part of it was teaching. The basis of it was that they wanted kids to enjoy reading. They thought if we make it fun, every kid's going to be a great reader. They're going to love to read. The problem with that is that reading doesn't come naturally for most kids. It's not like walking, where if you left them alone, they're going to learn to walk. They have to be taught. And a big part of the way that they began teaching kids was that if you came across a word you didn't understand, rather than sounding it out, you looked at the context, you looked if there was a picture, you looked at the first letter and sort of guessed at what it was. And it turns out that's really not a good way to teach kids how to read. And as a result, over the past 40 years, reading scores across the country have steadily declined.
Major education organizations in Wisconsin do oppose this bill. They said it's, that they're calling it a quick fix that won't address the problem. How involved were education organizations like these in the process of writing the bill?
Well, I think it's misleading to say it. There are a couple of education groups that are opposed to it. That's true. The reading specialists and WEAC, the teachers union. The problem is that first off, they were trained, all the colleges began training people in this balanced literacy. So it's pretty tough to come in and tell people after they've been teaching this way for quite a while that, hey, you've been doing it wrong. There are a number of groups, a lot of groups that are very much in support of this, though. So it's misleading to say that, all of the education groups are opposed to it. We did involve everyone. I mean, I've met with literally hundreds of people about this. So it's not like we just did this in the back room as they sort of claim. There was, widespread involvement, and certainly I worked closely with DPI, who works with all of the school districts.
Absolutely, and I know you had to make a few compromises to get Governor Evers to actually get this across the finish line. Do you want to talk through some of the tweaks that, you worked in a bipartisan way to get this bill signed? Sure.
I think that all of the sides sort of agreed on the basis, the framework of this bill, but there was some disagreement over certain parts of it. The biggest obstacle we had was that we had people, and honestly, it wasn't necessarily me, that wanted kids, hey, if they're not reading at grade level in third grade, we should hold them back. Well, most of the education groups were very much opposed to that. So we made compromises a couple of times along the way. The problem with holding them back is very often kids that struggle with reading, it's not that they struggle in other subjects necessarily, and it's not that they're not smart kids. It's just that for them, reading doesn't click right away. It takes a little more work. So rather than holding them back, where we ended up is that any kid that's not at grade level in third grade is going to be put on a plan, and they will stay on that plan to catch them back up. And until they're reading at grade level again, they don't come off of that, and the parents have to agree that, hey, we're good now. We don't need any more special attention. So that was really the major obstacle to it. Most of the other things, honestly, from the beginning, DPI and the governor and we as authors were pretty much in agreement on most of it.
Which is a rare thing in this legislature, to work together with a Democrat-controlled DPI, or not, I shouldn't say Democrat-controlled, but the Democrat governor has appointed these people. So this is a fairly big bipartisan win. Do you feel like that's a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, I think it really is. Honestly, I've not seen anything in my time in the legislature quite like this, where we were able to work together and come to a good compromise. It's been an evolution. Last session and the session before that, we did some things with literacy, and we really weren't on the same page with the governor, and he vetoed things. So, but I think there has been, as this problem has become more apparent across the country, and we've seen other states really improve their scores, it's become evident that we need to follow this approach to it. And so when I talked to the governor at the beginning of the session, I found that we had an awful lot in common on it. So I wasn't even going to do it if we didn't, because I didn't want to waste my time writing another lengthy bill just to have it vetoed.
Fair enough. The governor signed it. He did say when he signed it, it's only part of what he believes is needed. He also cited things like he wants to see, bills that expand mental health access, better food in schools. He says that's critical to better education outcomes. Do you see plans, whether this session or next, to pursue aspects like that as well?
Yeah, certainly. This isn't going to fix every problem. And I mean, he's absolutely right that when you see most kids that aren't achieving where they should be, it's very often because of, broken families, poverty, that kind of thing. So this certainly doesn't solve all of those problems. But I think that kids in poverty really are affected by this reading issue much, much more than kids that are not in poverty, because frankly, a parent of a kid of means, if their kid's having reading issues, they very often get a tutor and help them get caught back up, where that's not really an option for kids in poverty. So yeah, this is not going to solve everything, but I think it's really huge, and I think it really gives those kids a chance to succeed in school.
And this will take effect when?
Well, it'll begin being rolled out this year. We call for hiring like 64 reading coaches to be deployed around the state. We need to hire someone to oversee this sort of new sub-department on literacy. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But we're going to begin rolling it out as soon as possible. And I will say too that there are an awful lot of school districts that are already going down this road. The big 5 school districts, which includes Madison, even prior to us doing this, had already said, this is what we want to do. So now we're going to be able to offer them some help in doing that. Great
context. Representative, thanks so much for joining the show. This has been a really good conversation.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. After the break, how Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is responding to a recent court ruling that calls Wisconsin's 1849 abortion ban into question. We'll be right back.